Welcome to USA Global TV and Radio, where our mission is to provide education, entertainment, hope, and inspiration. USA Global TV and Radio connects you with experts and audiences all around the world every single day to help you succeed in business and to live a richer life. Visit us at usaglobaltv.com to learn about career and life-changing training and mentoring programs like the Listening Mentor. Subscribe to our newsletter to stay informed about our special programs and offers. Discover how you can become a guest on one of our shows or a host or producer of a USA Global TV and Radio show of your very own. That's USA Global TV and Radio, where the doctor is always in.
Hello and welcome to USA Global TV and Radio, where we provide world-class and education, entertainment, hope and inspiration. I'm Caroline Heward, known as the Harley Street Stress Expert, and I'm also USA Global TV's resident therapist and active and listening mentor. I am here today for the show. Our show today is The Listening Mentor, where we explore all sorts of avenues about active listening and listening with intention, really truly listening to everything that the person's saying, giving them our whole attention. Welcome to our regular viewers and a warm welcome to our new viewers, whether you're watching on the live or the replay. Our topic today is an interesting one. From feedback to success, adapting your message for better engagement. So let's begin to explore this topic. And it was interesting to me to look at this topic because feedback isn't always taken lightly. Sometimes we take feedback personally. And when we take feedback personally, we're not listening. And this is the key, because it's not about if somebody else hears us, it's about whether we're listening to ourselves. And as soon as somebody starts to give you constructive feedback or negative feedback, what happens is that if we are feeling vulnerable or feeling uncomfortable with that feedback, one of the things that we will do is stop listening. Yes. Have you ever been in that experience where somebody started to say, you're not going to like this, but I'm just going to tell you anyway, and your heckles are all up, ready for something that's really negative, and you're already in that place of protection, of defense mode. And when you're in defense mode, you stop listening and you more often mind read what the other person is saying and what they mean by what they're saying. They almost say something to you and then you give it a whole relevance and meaning that might not actually be how they intended it. So today I'm going to explore from feedback to success, adapting your message by looking at when somebody gives you feedback to use it constructively so that you can adapt what you're saying so that you get a really good result from people that are hearing your message. One of the things that I liken it to, and when I was training, I heard about a feedback sandwich. And if you've ever heard of this concept or not heard of it, I'm going to describe it. It's where you give somebody very positive feedback. So you tell them something that they did well. And when they hear that's something that they did well, you've got them in the right frame of mind. And then in the middle, you actually tell them something that they could improve on or something that they could do better if they did it a different way. So constructively, rather than really negative and going for the jugular, giving them something constructive. So constructive feedback on something that didn't work or didn't come across so well. So constructive feedback. And then the third part of the sandwich is when you give them again, you finish it off with something really positive. Not something that you make up, but something positive about how they delivered their message. And when you construct your feedback in this way, so something really positive, something they can improve on, so constructive feedback, and then something that they did really, really well, that feedback then is much easier to take and much kinder to the person's ears. And more importantly, it will give them a feeling of that they did well, and this is the bit they can improve on. So a feedback sandwich. And using a feedback sandwich, you can go from sending a mediocre message or not quite hitting the mark with somebody to moving into a place where you've really been heard. And one of the things I want to talk about in success in adapting your message is to listen to how the other person speaks. Because we all speak differently. Yes, we're from different parts of the country, different parts of the globe, and we all have different relevancies and meanings to things. And we all see, hear, and speak in different ways. What do I mean by that? Well, what I mean by that is we hear differently, and some of us are kinesthetic, so we will hear words that are feeling words, and when we express ourselves, we will say things that are sensory. So I feel that in my water. I don't feel that's a great idea, or that feels good to me. That's a kinesthetic person. If somebody's saying things like that makes sense, I understand. I want to look and explore this idea. They're very much in the mind, and they're very much in the logical, the visual, and in the space of looking at the words of it has to make sense to them. So if you give them a big picture, they will be saying things like, I understand. Can we look at this further? Tell me more. So when somebody's giving those kinds of cues, you know that they are looking at things from an understanding perspective. So they're analysing it, they're in their mind working it out, and it has to make sense. If somebody's looking at understanding from a sensory of pictures, so they're visual, they might say something like, I can picture that. I can see us both there. I can see us walking through the sand. I can see how that can be done. If somebody's kinesthetic, they will be feeling. And if somebody's looking at things from an understanding, a perspective of clarity, and they might be saying things like, I just need more confirmation on that. Can you clarify what you mean by that? And this is where they're trying to understand what you're saying. So if you're describing something, or you want to get them on side and get really good rapport with them and get your message across, the easiest way is to speak in their language. So if they are seeing things and saying things like, I can see us both there, adapt your message when you are speaking to them in the same frame of reference of how they are speaking to you. So if they need an understanding and they're saying that makes sense, I want you to use their same words back. And when you use the same words back, it's quite unbelievable the depth of rapport that you will achieve with that one person. When you're in a business meeting, for instance, and you're in a boardroom and looking at a marketing message, and you want to make sure that you're speaking to the audience for that delivery of that message, and you also want to be speaking to the people in that boardroom. So if they are a technical company, they will be looking at technical detail. And so you need to apply and develop your message so you're looking at the technical detail. And it helps when you can develop the message, what you want to say, in their way. Because when you say it in their way, they start to feel comfortable with you, and it develops a level of trust. Now, people buy from people they know, like, and trust. You might be a complete expert in what you do. You might be, you might have accolades and lots of awards, and yet what happens is that if you don't speak to them in their language, or if they don't trust you, then people buy people, and they will choose someone that is speaking like them, or they know, like, and trust. So working in business from a business perspective to gain success from feedback is first to listen. And this is the listening mentor. So if we listen to how they're communicating with us, then we can develop the right messages so that they feel comfortable. This requires you to listen without judging what they're saying. This also requires you to be non-committal with what you want to share. Only when they've finished, you can add what you feel will add value to how they see, how they want to develop their message. So adapting your message for better engagement. This is where you will develop really high levels of rapport and engagement. I had an email through from someone very recently, and it was to look at some contractual work. And when they sent the email, it was from a financial company, where I would have expected the language to be quite formal. And the person that emailed me said, "Congratulations, we're really interested in finding out more about what you do. Let's have a meeting." And they signed it, "Yours." And I thought that was really interesting to hear that language, "yours," and then signed only their first name. So I was kind of quite taken back, because this is a formal organization, and it was very full of exclamation marks, which made me feel that the language that they use within this organization is informal, and yet it's a formal organization. So I responded back saying I was excited to hear that you were keen to have a meeting, and that you liked what you saw. So I'm really keen to have set up this meeting. And I signed it, "Excited to hear from you soon, yours." And what I did there was I spoke in the language of the person that was communicating with me. And I fed that back each time. If they sent, the final message that they sent me was "best regards." So what did I do? I signed off "best regards," because when they hear and see the same language used, it gains equal rapport, and the success of that communication leads to trust, like, and incredibly better engagement. It leads to a place where you can feel comfortable and in equal rapport with that person. So better engagement. It sounds like a really professional, long fluted conversation from feedback to success, adapting your message. But really what we're doing here is we're looking at the person as a person. We're all people, and we're all human beings, and we all listen through our own personal filters. And we can't help that unless you've done some training, or you've done some coaching or mentoring work where you have to learn to listen. Because many of us don't listen to what the other person is actually saying, because what we do is we want to get straight in with our point of view, our perspective. And if you're in one-to-one meetings, So, for instance, networking or in business meetings, the person wants to be heard. So I've been doing a couple of networking meetings online in the last few weeks, and I found it quite fascinating the way that it was done in terms of each person went. And then we went into breakout rooms. And those breakout rooms gave us the opportunity to have what they called a one-to-one. And so this is where you learn a little bit more about the person. And there was one room where there was 4 of us, and I didn't actually realize there was a ticker, there was a timer at the top. And one person took 7 minutes, and we were only in there for a further 4 minutes. So there was 11 minutes. And I wasn't aware, it was my first meeting. And so I mentioned, I don't know how long we have in this breakout room. And one person said, oh, there's a countdown, a timer at the top of the screen. And it was 4 minutes and 33 seconds. I said, so that means there's 3 of us left. So we have just over a minute each. And this is where I didn't understand the rules. Other people didn't understand the rules. And the person that first spoke didn't know how long to speak. That something fascinating happened from that. And that is that I learned a lot about what that person did. And I was interested enough to ask other people asking questions because we didn't know there was a timer. So there was engagement. Now, it's interesting when you don't know what the rules are, and so you engage in a way that you normally would, and without understanding how much time there is for everyone else. Now, the person that took longer, she actually dropped a message to me to say, I'm really interested to have a conversation with you. I think that it would be good to explore some avenues of how we could work together. That person called me today, and she's working on a project, and she said that I think what you do would be really interesting for this project that we do with women. Now, I only gave a very brief overview about what I did, but what I did was I listened to what this person had to share, and I tailored what I shared towards making that symbiotic, so making that interesting to that particular person, as well as the other grape, the rest of the grape. So what am I getting at here? To tailor your message. And when we listen intentionally, actively, when we truly listen, it's amazing what we can hear and how we can speak so the person hears what we're saying. And I was in a networking group today for an hour, and instead of going first, I wanted to hear what everyone had to say so I could tailor what I was going to say towards the people in the room. So some people are uncomfortable about speaking first, or they feel a little afraid of putting their message across first, especially in a networking group. And if you are like that, it's really good to almost take a step back and hear what everyone else has to say, almost go last or go not far away from last, so that you can say things that might be relevant to the people that you are speaking to. So from feedback to success, adapting your message. These are all very, very wonderful little tips that you can do to attract people liking you, trusting you, and building excellent rapport with them. And people won't realize what it is that you did. They will just feel comfortable with you. And when you speak in their language, when you communicate with them in terms of what they've said and enter into a conversation. So when you actively listen, you enter into a conversation of what they've said. Now, usually there's 2 of us on this show, Dr. Jacalyn, And she's in the background hosting the show with all the tech and all the whizzy bits behind the scenes. And usually when we do this show together, I have no idea what she's going to ask me. And so I'm sort of sitting in the hot seat, and we have the topic, and that's as much as we have. And then I'm in the hot seat as to what she's going to ask me. The fact that she actively listens to what I'm saying is how the interview works. And then she will throw a question at me that might be unrelated or something that she wants to know. How would you do this? And what about when people aren't engaged with you? How would you get engagement from them? Speaking in their language. Now, sometimes it's not just about the words that they say. It's about the gestures. It's about the way that they look. So look into their eyes when you're speaking to someone. I happen to have always looked into people's eyes when I speak to them. That's been a natural thing for me. But I did find that when I was younger, that people said that they found it sometimes uncomfortable because I looked into their eyes or I looked into their face. And that's because they're not used to people looking into their eyes when you're speaking to them. And I've always done it. And then I found out when I did a lot of training in the coaching and mentoring world and my own personal spiritual involvement, that this is a skill to look at the person and speak to them by making eye contact. And some people are uncomfortable about making eye contact, and they'll almost look away because they feel uncomfortable to be face to face. But when there is that uncomfortableness, there might be something that they're not saying to you that makes you feel uncomfortable. You don't know what's going on in their lives, and they don't know what's going on in yours. There might have been a very stressful day. There might have been a meeting that went very wrong. There might have been a family situation that you had to handle. And then you are there in that meeting or in that conversation, and they don't know what's been going on in your day. And because they don't know, and you might have had a very stressful day, that you bring that with you. So one of the things that I would like to share is that with each engagement, with each person that you connect with, whether it be on a call, whether it be on a Zoom call or an on-screen call, or whether it be an audio call or a face-to-face meeting, is to almost give that person 100% of your undivided attention. If I'm ever on a call with someone and they tell me things, I'm usually so active in the listening that I don't make notes. Sometimes I make a quick note, but what I ask them to do is it'd be really helpful if you could send me those links because I didn't make a note. And that's because I'm doing nothing else. I'm only there listening to them. So I'm not trying to do 2 or 3 things. I'm 100% in their space and listening to every word. And conversations can get really interesting, and they can get so powerfully evolving because you become interested in what they're saying and they become interested in what you're saying. And interested rather than interesting. When you use the word that's interesting, it's not the same as interested. When somebody says, I'm interested, that's different from somebody saying, that sounds interesting. In the UK, particularly the Brits, if we've heard something, we will say something like, that's interesting. And it's almost like, thank you very much. That sounds great, but not for me. And so it's almost a dismissive. And so how to move yourself from interesting to being interested is you taking interest in the other person and what they have to say. I've been networking for a long time. In fact, I had a one-to-one with somebody over a telephone call this afternoon, which should have been an hour, and it landed up being an hour and 40 minutes. But we became interested in what each of us had to say. And so interested did we become, time flew by. And this person suggested that we have a part 2, that this is how you develop relationships. Remember, people buy from people they know, like, and trust. And when they know you and like you and trust you, that leads to better engagement and more success for you. And be human. We are all human and we all have things going on. We can't be 100% all of the time. And if we are, we might be faking it. It's good to be real. If there is something that's been going on, it will be in your vibration, it will be in your frequency if you have had a difficult day. And so when you are having a difficult day, I want you to almost smile, change your state, and go into the next conversation as if it's the beginning of your day, as if they're the most important thing, the most important person to have that conversation with. Give them your best, give them your all, because they have no idea what has happened in your day. Better engagement. When you engage with someone, it makes conversation easier. And so when you're looking at feedback, somebody will give you feedback sometimes unsolicited. And it's not because they don't care, it's because they do care and they want to tell you something that might be helpful to you. Now, when I started training back in the early noughties, I had somebody that was training us and was a bit what I would call out there. He had some very interesting ways of applying what he had learned. And he told us something that I found very powerful, and I use this to this day. He told us that he might share things that we don't like. He might share things that we really like. We adapt and think, I'm going to use that principle and I'm going to use that in my conversations and in my therapy. And then there were things that he said that were a complete no-no. And what he shared was that we're all individuals. We all see the world and people through our own personal filters. And he was expressing himself from his own personal filters, which might not agree with our own. And he said, there are some things that you're going to like. And he said, and please take those on gladly. There's some things that you're going to hate. If you're open to listen and it's not for you, discard them. And there are some things that you're going to say, that's just not for me, that I've heard a new and an interesting perspective. And it's always about perspective. When you hear somebody else's perspective, it can give you an idea that you might not have experienced or you would have not led to that idea yourself personally. And that's why I like to have conversations with lots of different types of people from different backgrounds, because when you congregate with people from many different myriads of backgrounds. So when I was in corporate, I used to hang out with a lot of solicitors, barristers, lawyers, bankers, traders, stockbrokers, a lot of people from the consultancy type world, like Rag & Co, Coopers and Lybrand, and the banks. And so that was who I hung out with. And that was who I networked with, and that was who I had conversations with. And at the time when I was in corporate, I was in PR and marketing. So I was doing things like hospitality events, organising huge dinners and organising gala receptions, champagne receptions. And so this was where people would engage in small talk. So how can you become the person that's interesting, that the person is interested in what you have to say? Be interested, be curious, because when you are curious, you are more open for opportunities that you might not have seen. So going back to feedback, sometimes it's a bitter pill and it might not be right for you. but the person is sharing what they're sharing from their own personal views, perspective, and experiences. And we all develop our own filters from our personal lives and experiences. And those experiences start from childhood, from 2 years old, where we develop in our informative years from when you're first born right up until the age of 12. And whatever we experience, we then put on a meaning or a belief, or we give it some relevance. And so when somebody does that, that means this. But what about if they didn't mean what you thought they meant? So one of the things that I use is, can you clarify what you mean? And in advanced counselling, we use a term called paraphrasing or summarising. And so it's like a backwards and forwards. So the person shares something with you, and then you paraphrase what they've said, or you summarize by saying something like, so if I've heard you correctly, what you are saying is X, Y, and Z. And with doing it this way, then Y, Z, and A will come out as an outcome. They said, yes, that's right. And then they feel that you heard them. They feel that you listened. And more importantly, they felt that you engaged with them. And so they will give you a little bit more to give you a bit more flesh on the bones of what they initially said. Because some people don't give everything to you. They give you what they think you want to hear. But when you paraphrase and summarize, you're then asking them, you're saying, I want to understand, I want to make sure that I've got this right, that this is what you're thinking. And ideas come from that, and opportunities that you never ever would have thought of if you'd just been in that conversation by not actively listening. So this is where you will get a success rate that is beyond recognition, beyond belief. I've had people many times, even just in a phone call, say, I feel like I've known you for years. I feel so comfortable talking to you. I feel like you know me, and I've not said very much to you, but I feel like you really understand me. I feel like you get me. And when somebody feels like that, they become more open to tell you more. So that when you're in a business relationship, if you're in a relationship, personal or a friendship, what that does is when you engage in that way, it moves for better relationships, better communication, and more importantly, it leads to opportunities and successes that you probably wouldn't have experienced or seen. I had a couple of really, really wonderful mentors who just came to all of my talks when I first started speaking on stage. And both of them gave me what I considered unsolicited feedback. And I know they did it because they cared. And sometimes it was really rewarding. And I built myself up and I went on stage and I had my 15, 20 minutes and I might have gone over. And then I came off stage, and both of them, in their own ways, one was a beautiful monk and another one was in a speaking academy. And they would both give me at different times feedback. Oh, you could have said that a little different. Or, I think people missed the point there. And I could have been quite upset, or I could have felt, oh, that didn't go well. As an ever and a lifelong student, I always am open for feedback. Even if I've been advised I've done something not so great, I'm open for feedback. And this is something that I would really like you and invite you to take on board, being open for feedback. I've been advised that I'm very coachable, even though I've been doing this kind of work and being in the mentoring, coaching, and therapy business since the early noughties. And the reason for that is I'm naturally curious. I'm not one size fits all. It's a different kettle of fish, we call it. Everybody is different. And what might be clear and true for one person might be somebody else's demise. And so it's important to know that when we speak to people, that to be hearing feedback from their perspective might give us the golden nugget that we didn't see. One person turned around to me that I was in a networking group online again, and I've recently moved from London to the north part of the country. And I was always out and about. And one of the people of this networking group, they said to me, "You need to get yourself out, girl. You need to be going to networking meetings." And it was something that I hadn't thought about. It was something that I was missing. It was something that I was doing a lot of when I was in London. And it was something that I had forgotten about. And it's because I didn't know how. I didn't know where to go in a new city. I didn't know who to contact and how to get into the inner circle of the business circles. And what was interesting, and I'm sure that the phones are listening to us, suddenly there was an advert that came up for a business networking group. And I then signed up for a free networking meeting. That free networking meeting has led me to do 3 other meetings, one-to-ones, that have led into combination of finding out more about my local business environment and people genuinely wanting to help me to meet people in my locality in terms of business and opportunities. And it's because one person gave me feedback. You need to go out networking. You need to find the networking groups and speak to people and network in all different areas, whether it's online or local face-to-face. And suddenly, because I'm thinking about it and because I'm wanting to find a way to learn more about the new city that I have moved to, the world is now full of people saying, you need to go here. There's this networking event. There's this networking event. And that's because I was open for what sounded like very negative feedback. You need to get out there. And it felt like a bit judging. And I didn't take it that way. What I did was I thought, well, that's great. You're right. I do need to go out networking. I do need to meet people in my local business area. How do I do that? And suddenly my whole world in the last 2 weeks has become busy with people I would never have met. And somebody I'd known for over 2 decades was in one of the networking rooms. And we spent time today, over an hour and a half, where she was giving me all sorts of advice. And this came from what I could have taken as a negative piece of feedback. You need to go out networking. So it was showing me up as I wasn't doing something, a bit of negative feedback. But what has come out of it is lots of golden nuggets. So I share this with you because sometimes it's a bitter pill to swallow, something you're not doing. Other people see the gaps. We're in the world, that we're in the storm. We're actually in the something that we're in, and we can't see things. Other people can see what we don't see. And because other people see things, feedback sometimes can really work and can move you from feeling negative or feeling lost or not being quite sure what to do next to a place of success. My world has suddenly got very busy, and in terms of business opportunities and business connections in the city, in the locality of where I have moved to. And 2 weeks ago, that wasn't there. And that's from feedback to success, adapting my message, adapting what I was doing. And it made me see that it's possible to go from something that sounds a little negative, or I could have taken that very judgmental, to a place of success. And I don't know how the year is going to end. I can tell you there's all sorts of events that I'm being invited to, that people are nurturing me in my new city, and people are welcoming me at a time that I didn't know how to. And it's the how to. Other people can see the opportunities and can see the message that you need to give. It's making me brush up on my 1 minute message. It's making me get back into the saddle, so to speak. So I wanted to share this with you because sometimes feedback can be taken negatively, or I'm good enough, but sometimes it can give you a new perspective. And not only that, it can give you an opportunity, a piece of gold that you wouldn't have seen otherwise. Opportunities are everywhere. It just depends if you're looking for them and if you're open for them. So from feedback to success, be open, because you never know where each conversation will go, and you never know who is connected to who. And more importantly, you never know where that might lead you in your life and your experiences. And from the feedback that I had when I was speaking on stage, one of the people invited me and referred me to be on this channel and to do an interview. I was very uncomfortable because I didn't feel that it was right for me to do. And here I am, 3 years later, the resident therapist of USA Global TV and Radio, and very, very good friends with Dr. Jacalyn. But more to the point, I've developed a whole circle of friends that I would never have met online, globally, and I've moved from where I was doing my one-to-one work in my little networking groups in London to being global. And that was never in my radar. And that was from feedback from a person that cared enough to push me out of my comfort zone. And sometimes feedback can do that. It can make us feel a little uncomfortable, but at the same time, it can move you to a place of success. Thank you very much for your interest, and thank you very much for being here with me and listening to this topic. This is something that's very dear to my heart because I'm really encouraging feedback. This show has been The Listening Mentor. We're here twice a month, and we look forward to seeing you in 2 weeks' time. That's Dr. Jacalyn and myself. That's who we do it as, both of us. And if you want to reach out to me, you can reach out to me on nomorestress@live.co.uk, or call if you're international +44. If you're local, 07523 120 189. And I help you bust your stress. How do I do that? I work with root cause therapy and chakra psychology, how the mind and body connects and what happens to the person physically, emotionally, mentally when there's an imbalance. And the imbalance is a symptom. It's whatever you're complaining about. And if you're complaining about a relationship, if you're complaining about a work colleague or a member of your family, it's something that's unresolved in you. And I help you break through the pattern that's creating your repeating pattern of your stress. And you move from the physical, emotional, mental pain to calm, to silence in the mind, and you become more peaceful. And I look forward to helping you bust your stress. Offer a free 15-minute discovery call and an incredible 1-hour consultation. Look out for my details, and I look forward to helping you bust your stress. We now move on to the end of our show. So I want to invite you to subscribe to USA Global TV and Radio. We do have a VIP exclusive community. So when you become an exclusive VIP community member, You have first access to the newest videos and photographs and on insights on the British royal family. It's live streamed on USA Global TV and Radio and YouTube. Please do subscribe because there's a lot of wonderful content. Thank you very much for listening, and I look forward to seeing you next week. Bye-bye for now.